Hi, this is Sean Hall with Sodium Dental. Today we're going to do a little video talking about the title here is the Dexis Titanium the same as a Platinum? This video kind of comes from the source of the, I guess it comes from one of my clients coming to me because they were looking at trading in a number of Dexis Platinums to us. Well, not trade in, like they kind of wanted to just sell them to us and see if we could find a dentist who could make use of them. And obviously my first question whenever someone approaches me with, hey, I've got a bunch of really expensive things I bought that work perfectly. Do you want them? And so, I mean, it happens. Sometimes people are retiring. Sometimes people are selling their practice and the new owner isn't going to pay for the things. Or maybe they bought a new practice and they're using a different sensor and they can't really integrate these into their system, so on and so forth. So I just asked the question, I was like, hey, so why are you getting rid of these Dexis Platinums? I was like, if they're working great and they're in great condition, I was like, why get rid of them? And, they told me that basically they had someone come into their office and tell them, this, I assume a rep. They were pretty vague about it, but I don't know what that is. I mean, there's a lot of like protecting your dude or your person out there, I guess. People feel a real attachment to long-term reps they've worked with and so on. But they were like, they told, so anyway, this is their story. They were told that the new Dexis Titanium is significantly better than the Dexis Platinum, and basically that the doctor was kind of not using the best information if they continued to use their Dexis Platinums and didn't buy new Dexis Titaniums. Now, this is one of those moments where in a phone conversation I have to take a step back because I'm not going to interpret that person's beliefs on why they said what they said. But from my point of view, my client that we do IT work for and we take care of, sure, I'd love it if they were buying my sensors, but I'm not going to tell them that they're doing a disservice to their patient if they don't just immediately get rid of the sensors they have that are working great and come buy a bunch of my new product. That's pulling on a feeling that dentists are obviously always concerned about, is caring about the patients, doing what's best. And so, to take someone who does have a sense of professional responsibility, a doctor who actually cares about their patients a lot, a doctor that's willing to pull money out of their pocket to make sure they're taking the best care of their patients, to take that type of a person and then to basically get them to spend, $50,000 on new products to replace products that are working perfectly for them. That is not good behavior in my opinion. So what I did in that situation was I simply told him, I was like, there are no review sites you can go to out there that are going to tell you the difference between a Platinum and a Titanium. I was like, I've looked all over. I don't know what these review sites are doing, and I don't know why they don't, but I guess I'll do one. But I told them in the meantime, here's the best thing you can do. Take your Dexis Platinum, take an x-ray, use a tube head, use the same tube head, use the same patient, take an x-ray, have the rep bring in a demo of the Titanium, take an x-ray out of that, compare your Platinum x-ray to your Titanium x-ray. If you don't see a difference, if you don't see something, if you can't diagnose something in the Titanium that you couldn't diagnose in the Platinum, save your money, invest it in your kid's future, invest it in yourself. It's unnecessary. And I'm like, that's my advice. I mean, the honest advice I wanted to give was that person straight up is not being honest with you, and I would never buy anything from them again. But if you give advice like that, people tend not to want to listen, because they sometimes like the people they're buying from, and no one wants to hear, hey, someone's doing me a disservice. So So I thought, hey, you know what I'm going to do is, it's unlikely that everybody that's getting this sales pitch is going to happen to be a client of ours, call me up and talk to me about it. So I thought I'd do this YouTube video. And so we have kind of like a museum of sensors here, right? We've been repairing dental sensors for a long time. We have a lot of old dead heads around. We have a lot of things laying around. So we busted out. First of all, we've noticed that there almost appears to be different versions of the Dexis Platinum. I'm not making any assumptions as to what they're doing. You know, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it appears to us that there's different versions of the Dexis Platinum. Right here, like this picture. Okay, let's start off here. We went ahead and laid out these 3 different versions of Dexis Platinums that we seem to see. You can see, like, you have to understand things like this are mass produced, so the housings should all look identical if they were all identical, right? Like if all the Dexis Platinums were identical, the housing should look identical. So we've got this one I'm going to refer to as the shiny Dexis Platinum. This one we started seeing in, let's say, recent years. This one right here, second from the right in the picture, this is the Dexis Platinum that we've seen the most of over the years. We started seeing in 2009. This might be this is probably not a 2009 edition, but this is the most common one we've seen. And then we've got over here this Dexis Platinum we've been seeing only recently. And, if you're not used to looking at these things, it's hard to spot the differences. But here's one of the big differences right here is, see this one that we saw a lot, second from the right? See how short the strain relief is for the cable? And see how almost the curves of the head, pay attention to those. Look at how it starts curving earlier here from the face to the back. Now this one that we started seeing recently, you can see the little dome on the top is bigger. The strain relief is longer. And you can also see that it's a less rounded housing. You can see that it takes more of a sharp turn up here at the top. Almost like they needed to make the housing taller to fit certain components inside or something. I don't know. I don't want to make any guesses. Maybe they just made the housing thicker, and in the process of making it thicker, they had to eliminate the curves. But I wonder how that affects their comfort, because now it's obviously blockier. You can see it right in the picture. And then here is a Dexis Titanium. Now, I know what you might be saying is, how do you already have a broken Dexis Titanium when they've only been selling Dexis Titaniums for what, a year now? They came out in what, 2018? Well, here's what I have to say about that. I'm going to go ahead and make my video really big here for this little display. These are just the non-repairable Dexis Titanium deadheads we have currently. For a sensor that's been out for less than a year. Now, I know what you might think to yourself is, well, if you sell a lot of something, there's probably a lot of broken things, right? That's probably true. My question is why weren't these traded in? You know, why do we have them? You know, so who knows what happened? But just know there's a fair amount of dead ones out there. I hope we've already had one customer, despite the new "we cover everything" claims of the Cavo Complete plan, which, by the way, I want you to see this. Here's a Dexis Titanium head that says Cavo on it. Weird, right? So Dexis, are they gonna change brand? I don't know. But going forward, so this just leave a pile of those out there for a little while. That's fun to look at. Gets in the way of my mouse. So, all right. So we've got some comparisons we can make here, and I think that since we have this information, since we have access to being able to make these comparisons, you know, we almost have a duty to do that. You know, one thing I can tell you is I'm holding an old Dexis here, and I just want to lay out some comparisons that I've noticed. Is the old Dexises, you see, they had the smaller strain relief. The one thing I noticed about though is they did have more flexibility right here. Like, you really bend this cable back. Now the only reason you ever bend the cable that much is for sometimes when people are taking vertical bite wings. I personally don't even like to bend the cable that much when you're taking vertical bite wings. I like to let the cable come down a little bit and then loop back up. But I can tell you sometimes when you're trying to fit it in that space, it's got to be pulled up taut. Now on these new titanium heads, I can tell you right now, this strain relief is a lot stiffer, which might be a good thing. You know, it forces a little less bend in the cable. I'd like to see how that's going to pan out with sensor life, because the strain relief is stiffer, so I can see how that supports the sensor cable. But here's my problem is when I try and bend this cable up, it takes a lot of force for me to hold the sensor where it's at. So then my question becomes, if you try and put a vertical bite wing in someone's mouth, okay, so it's the sensor holder and their mouth that's holding it in place. If it takes a lot of force to bend that strain relief, I feel like you're just going to pull your sensor right out of position. You know, it takes a lot. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see that. You know, do people have a little more trouble getting their vertical bite wings with the new titanium? I don't know. We'll have to. Yeah, that'll be up to clinicians to tell you. So here we go. We got, as you can see here, you go from like kind of this, the picture right here on the bottom is kind of like a little reversed. So like this sensor right here that's on the far right is actually this sensor. You can tell by the head. You spot it right away. See, shiny, shiny, not shiny, not shiny. So the original Dexis Platinums that we always saw had this green board. I've been seeing this green board for years, trust me. And you know, this is what we're used to seeing in a Dexis Platinum. Now all of a sudden, and you'll see shorter strain relief. Now all of a sudden in the past I don't know, year or so, we've been seeing these Dexis Platinums, like this shiny one and this other not shiny one. But you can see they have the long strain reliefs, like the titanium, longer strain reliefs. These, which is this sensor right here and this sensor right here, are purple and purple. Kind of looks like it's a new board. And what does this new board look just like? Oh, the Dexis Titanium's new board. So I'm not going to make any statements of fact here. You can make a decision for yourself. If you think this looks a lot like this. And I'd also be curious as to what the Dexis Platinum pricing is now if you try and buy it new versus what the Dexis Titanium pricing is. That's a question like I'll never get answered for myself, because obviously they don't put prices online, because all prices apparently have to be a secret. You have to talk to a salesperson to find out what something costs. Let me tell you, if I had to shop for a car that way, I would lose my mind. Like if like cars were unknown prices and I just had to go to a dealership and talk to a sales rep to find out what something costs, I would lose my mind. I think that in general, you should just all stand up against that. You should just be like, no, if you can't put your price online, how do I know you're not giving a great price to someone and me a terrible price? Because that seems like the best reason not to put your prices online is if you want to be able to give really variable pricing. Which, you know, hey, it's great if you're the person getting a deal. kind of stinks if you're the person, if you're the only guy in town that's paying, $13,000 for your sensor, right? Okay, so there's like a quick visual comparison. We did a little more here. We went a little step further with this. We went ahead through some calipers. So right here, you can see here's the measurements of the Dexis Titanium as we measured them. Whatever the manufacturer's measurements are, that's up to them. This is what our caliper tells us, right? So we got the width at 29.75. We've got the height at 39.75. This is in millimeters, mind you. So the second position after the decimal is pretty small. And we've got the thickness at 8.79. Now, what do we get when we measure this most recent? So that's the titanium, right? Covered it up, sorry. Titanium measurements. Now here is when we measured this most recent Dexis Platinum we've been seeing. Well, 29.73 versus 29.75. You might just go ahead and assume that that's just how tightly we press down on the calipers. Because when you're talking about, a hundredth of a millimeter, we can depress plastic that much pretty easily. 39.94, 39.75. We can see we seated the calipers a little farther back here. And 8.79 versus 8.59. We might have just gripped it in a different location. I think you're going to see that what appears, what I'm looking at, and I don't, hey, it's up to you how you feel about this. But what I'm looking at is what appears to be fairly identical dimensions, especially when you compare. So remember that old school Dexis sensor I was talking about, that we had there, the one that we saw for years. Here's the dimensions from the original Dexis Platinum we just always saw. 38.82 in length. Now we're talking a millimeter off in difference. 29.67 in width, so width pretty much identical. Thickness. See, this is interesting. Thickness. Thickness of the most recent Dexis Platinum we saw 8.59. The titanium, 8.79. Like I said, when you're talking, 0.2 of a millimeter, or actually realistic, 0.2 of a millimeter difference there. Maybe that's a measurement error. But when you're seeing this original one at 8.12 millimeters, now you're talking about 0.6 or 0.4 of a millimeter difference. Was the original Dexis Platinum thinner? Are you now getting a thicker sensor in your titanium? The Dexis is already one of the thickest sensors on the market. So you're getting a really thick sensor? I don't know. It seems that way. And do the rounded corners still matter as much when you're getting a thicker and thicker and thicker sensor? You got to fit down in that cavity, next to the tori, next to everything that's going on. So that's it. That's my evaluation. I can pull up some other stuff here. We can really look at, when we look at the chips on here, the chip setting pattern is nearly identical. I'm not going to go ahead and give away all the serial numbers and everything like that. I like to leave people some amount of privacy, but I'm just, so I'm curious. Is the new Dexis Titanium the same as these new Dexis Platinums we've been seeing on the market? And what's the price difference? The Dexis Platinum was released, here's their 510K pre-market. It was released back in, it was received on February of 2009. They had a decision in 3 months. That's quick. That's very quick. Here's the Dexis Titanium's pre-market. If you look at these pre-markets, by the way, the applicant name back in the day was just Dexis LLC out of Orange, California. Looks like the contact was Claudia. I don't know, who cares? Yeah. But, Dexis LLC was the applicant. You'll see now, this is the same device, by the way. Don't pay more for the Cavo IXS HD than you're paying for the Titanium, because apparently they're identical. You can see when they did the 510K, they went ahead and got themselves 2 brands. So the Cavo IXS HD, so, there's always the Dexis Titanium and the Gendex GXS 700s, right? And those were always all like the same sensors, just in different sizes. So you can see here the Dexis Titanium is like the size 1.5, and the Cavo IXS HD is their size 1 and size 2. Now here's what's interesting is, who's the applicant? Cavo Dental Technologies, Charlotte, North Carolina, because Cavo bought Dexis, I guess. There you go. So that's a little information for you. And, hey, if you didn't know this and you aren't aware, you may want to call Cavo up and ask them about whether or not your Class 2 device was recalled. That's right. I found while I was just looking up a little FDA information, I noticed that there is a Class 2 device recall for the Dexis Titanium intraoral sensor. They do give a list of serial numbers affected, but it may be easier to just go ahead and call and find out how this recall has impacted, if this recall impacts you. I don't understand why they wouldn't just, I know they have to issue a recall, but also hopefully they just called all these customers, because I would think obviously they know who have these sensors since they control the distribution of the products. So, just be aware, they have already had a Class 2 device recall on the Dexis Titanium intraoral sensor. All right, well, I'm going to keep this one short. Normally these videos go on far too long. So that's it. You make up your mind, is the Dexis Titanium really a new sensor?